Hey guys, thank you for joining us for another video. We got a good one prepared for you today. We have a preview and prediction video for our Alabama versus Tennessee matchup for Week 8 of the 2024 college football season. So what we're going to do is we are going to completely break down this game, go over both teams' rosters, and try to predict the outcome for the game. Who's going to win, lose, and what we predict the final score will be. We will also touch on the money lines, the spreads, and the over-unders for this matchup as well. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. If you have any comments about this game or anything else, make sure to drop it below, and I will respond every single week. We go over every single college football game, all of them. We break down the money lines, the spreads, and the over-unders, and we also do the same thing for every NFL game as well. Make sure you hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed. If you are a football fan, a sports fan in general, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So, like I said, we are going to be breaking down one of the best matchups of the year. The games are getting really good. We are getting deeper into conference play every single week, so these games mean more and more and more every week. On ABC at 3:30 p.m., we have number 7 Alabama coming in at 5-1. They'll be playing 5-1, number 11, the Tennessee Volunteers. Right now, Alabama is a slight favorite. They have a 53.8% chance to win this game. This game is practically a 50-50, and they are 3-point favorites. The over-under here is 56.5. Now, both teams are 5-1. Both teams are trying to give the other team their second win, but it would be each team's second conference loss. What that means is that probably, potentially, places you out of the running for the SEC championship. This game means a lot here. Both of these teams want to make the playoffs. Both teams are more than playoff caliber, but it's can they get to the SEC championship, try to win the SEC, and thus get that bye week first round of the playoffs. So there's a lot riding on this game right now, and both teams kind of come into this game limping. Defenses have been a little questionable the last few weeks, but it's mainly the offenses that have had a lot of turnovers. They've been sloppy, haven't been playing up to par from what we saw for the first few weeks of the season. Looking at the Alabama team, obviously, Nick Saban has retired. They are now led by Kalen DeBoer, and they have Jalen Milroe at the quarterback position, who hasn't played his best game the last 2 weeks. Obviously, they had that loss to Vanderbilt where they got dominated at both lines of scrimmage, and then they had the win, just barely beating out South Carolina in Tuscaloosa. That was not a good game. That's back-to-back weeks now where we have seen Alabama play questionable. Everybody was wondering, how would they rebound to the Georgia win? I said they'd probably play a little questionable, but who thought they'd get dominated by Vandy? Well, they came out, they played questionable, they took that game for granted, and they got punched in the mouth. How would they respond to that loss? They came out again the next week and looked awful versus South Carolina. So now the question still remains, how is Alabama going to look? Every week, they come out looking questionable since their big win versus the Georgia Bulldogs. So we need to see, does Kalen DeBoer, is he able to round everyone up, get everyone back on track, circle the wagons here? The goal is the playoffs. The goal is the national championship. First step, playoffs. Well, first step is the SEC championship. So can he get everyone's focus back on track and get this team to rebound? This is the number 1 overall roster according to ESPN. They are a deep roster, even with the guys that went into the transfer portal. Very deep. Jalen Milroe closing in on 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, 4 picks. Right now, they come into this game, they're averaging 41.7 points a game. That's great. No issues with that. They have had some turnovers the last few weeks, but no issues closing in on 42 per game. They're throwing for 279.7. They're running for 179.2. That's not bad. Run game has been questionable the last 2 weeks. Why? Because of the line of scrimmage. They have not been dominating the offensive line. Overall, 180 per game is perfectly fine, but the last 2 weeks, they definitely have not been hitting that. They need to focus on the run game. Their run game has been very Jalen Milroe based. Outside of him, they have not been dominating the rushing attack. That's un-Bama-like. Concentrate on that run game. Concentrate on the defense. Right now, their defense is giving up 20.8 points per game, 228.8 yards through the air, 129.2 yards on the ground. 20.8 points per game would not be bad for your normal team. That's probably the most I've seen Bama give up in the last 15 years. Basically, since Saban became the head coach at the Crimson Tide. That is awful for an Alabama team, especially a team that's rated the number 1 overall roster. That needs to be down in the 14 to 15 area. Sub 14, 15 every year under Saban. Now you're pushing 21 points per game with the number 1 roster, and you're not even deep into conference play yet. That raises a lot of question marks because there's going to be some teams on you that can score, especially Tennessee-type teams, where that number is going to continue to tick up. Once you get into the playoffs, when you have the Buckeyes, the Texases, the Oregons, there's teams that can score at will. If you're not able to stop Vanderbilt, South Carolina, that's a massive red flag. Looking at our playmakers, we have Milroe, like I said, closing in on 1,500 yards. We have Miller, the lead rusher, closing in on 400 yards. That's not going to cut it halfway through the season. He's on pace right now for 720 rushing yards as their leading rusher. They need a 1,000-yard back. They need someone to step up, and they have to game plan it. And they have Ryan Williams really stepping things up as a true freshman, lighting things up, closing in on 600 yards. When you're looking at Tennessee, they're in a very similar boat. So they are 5-1. It's their offense that has been letting them down in the last few weeks. Nico, since he's been getting hit, pressured, he has not adapted yet the last 2 to 3 weeks. The last 3 weeks straight, they have yet to score over 25 points. So looking at their last couple wins, obviously they had the NC State game, 51-10. Then they beat Kent 71-0. And then after there, you see the offense completely stall out. So up to that point, they were averaging 60 per game, number 1 in the country. That's definitely fallen off. They beat Oklahoma 25-15. They lost to Arkansas 19-14. And then they beat Florida 23-17. So they've scored 25, they've scored 14, and they've scored 23. So they're averaging about 20 to 22 points per game the last 3 weeks, basically since they got into SEC play. So their offense was rolling, and the moment they hit SEC play, they dropped down to averaging 22 to 20 points a game. That is awful, but we know there is playmakers there. We know this team can score, but since the competition has gotten more difficult, we've seen this team come way back down to earth. They need to find something to light up the offense. They need to find something to get Nico some time because his production has definitely fallen off the last month. He's closing in on 1,300 yards, 7 touchdowns, 3 picks. They're averaging 42.2 points a game. They're right there with Alabama points-wise. This game could easily turn into a shootout, which means that whoever has the ball last could potentially win it. They're throwing for 247.2, running for 246.2. Obviously, one of the most rounded offenses in the country. But it's their defense this season. They're giving up 10.7 points a game. So Alabama has defensive issues. Tennessee definitely still does not have defensive issues. Even when they got into conference play, the defense has continued to play at the same level. And they're top 10 in quarterback hurries, top 10 in sacks. They're giving up 183.8 yards through the air. Only 79.7 yards on the ground. Alabama's having issues running the ball, and it's going to be especially hard to run the ball consistently versus the Tennessee Volunteers. They love to get that line pressure. They're going to seek to dominate the line of scrimmage. Alabama has yet to show that they can dominate the line of scrimmage under Kalen DeBoer since they've been in the SEC. As I mentioned before, you have Nico closing in on 1,300 yards. You have Dylan Sampson, 699 rushing yards, a great rushing attack. He is closing in on 1,400 for the season. They have Thornton Jr., they have Squirrel White. They have a lot of weapons. They have a lot of name guys who are possessing the ball. Great skill position talent, better skill position talent than Alabama has shown this season. How is Josh Heupel going to be able to dial things up? This isn't Saban Heupel. Heupel showed that he can beat Saban. It's DeBoer Heupel. To me, this game has shootout written all over it. So who do I think is going to win this one? This is going to be a close one. It's 50-50. It could go either way. I think Alabama's going to have that ball last. I have Alabama winning this one, 30-28. I do not have them covering the spread. I'm going with the over. If Tennessee won it 30-28, I would in no way be surprised. I think it's just going to be whoever's lucky enough to have the ball last at the very end of this game is going to be the one that wins it. I have that being Bama, and I have Tennessee getting that second loss. But Alabama needs to be prepared. If the defense keeps playing like they played the last few weeks, this is going to be Tennessee's game. So that's our breakdown. That's our preview and prediction for the Alabama versus Tennessee football game. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. If you have any comments, drop them below and I will respond. Thank you.